Welcome back to the Movie Trap Podcast. Wine films murder, where wine pours smoother than the editor's bribe, and every headline hides a scandal. I'm Tata Baps.
And I'm Mamie Mellons. Tonight we're chasing down crooked politicians, jailbreaks, and one pushy newspaper man will stop at nothing to get to his story.
That's right. Tonight's hot lead is His Girl Friday 40. Howard Hawks' screwball comedy where love, lies, and lawbreaking run side by side. So our vintage tonight, a bold, fast-acting red blend made from Cabernet Franc, Merlot, Petit Verdot, Cabernet Sauvignon, and Tannat grapes. A 2021 Golden Turkey from Enhart Vineyards in Purcellville, Virginia. Impossible to ignore, barrels in with the same relentless pace and razor-sharp charm as Cary Grant's Walter Burns. One sip and you're swept into the rapid news fire room chaos, punchy, assertive, and delightful, unrelenting. Perfect for a film that never gives you a chance to catch your breath. So to start off, we do our wine tasting. So we have this beautiful red blend. Like I said, it has all these various grape varietals in it. It has a very beautiful dark red, kind of ruby color.
Yeah.
It's very pretty. Very purple. Yeah, very nice. So supposedly for the smells, you can have vanilla, plum, cedar, black pepper, cherry, and licorice. For myself, let's see what I can detect. It definitely smells like a little like black pepper. You see red fruit, like the cherry and the plum, those flavors. And then tasting, I think once again it has those darker berries, so it has that tartness, maybe like a tart cherry. There is something else there. Maybe it's a pepper. I don't know, but it kind of has like a nice aftertaste that I can't quite place. It's very smooth. It's just like velvet on your tongue, right? It's really really nice. Maybe that's what it
I
is.
think so.
Yeah. So your thoughts on the food pairing?
You know me, I always, any type of red wine that has that pepper, every time I go to steak, because I've had it.
Yeah.
I've had a wine with the pepper finish. And when you put the steak with it, there's just no beating it.
I could also see like maybe a creamy cheese or something like that with this one too.
Yeah. You think a brie would do it?
Maybe a goat cheese. I'm really enjoying this.
Oh,
This
good.
is I've only been there once. Definitely need to take you there.
A little piece of it.
So what are your thoughts in terms of your rating out of 5 wine glasses?
Being as I am, red wines usually I don't drink. It's not my go-to, and this one really would be my go-to. I put it at a 5. I like it. It's just very for red, because a lot of reds. One of the reasons I don't like them is they're usually so dry and just kind of like are heavy and are just, and the tannins are very heavy. So I'm going to give this one this 5. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So 5 it is for me.
Yeah, it's interesting because it has a hint of sweetness to it, so that's very pleasant. And it has the taste that just kind of lingers, but it's very pleasant too. It's like complex, right?
Right.
But it's very smooth to the palate. Yeah, no, it's a very pleasant red wine, and I agree. Sometimes they're too dry, and we tend to be like more semi-sweet. I wouldn't say this is it's on the lower end of a even a semi-sweet, right? Like it's not that sweet, but it has enough of a hint of it that it smooths it out. This might be one of those wines where, as we talked, it goes down pretty easily, smooth, so we can talk really, really fast, right? So it keeps on going down your gullet and just makes you want to talk more and more and more.
Drink more and more and more.
Exactly.
Like I said, I don't see that bottle lasting a long time.
It's not, no. And like I said, it was the first time we'd been there, and really enjoyed it. So I was very pleasantly surprised.
Thank you for turning me on to it.
Yeah. Well, cheers. So we're going to go ahead and return to the film's story.
In His Girl Friday, Cary Grant plays Walter Burns, a cutthroat newspaper editor whose ex-wife, And star reporter Hildy Johnson, who is played by Rosalind Russell, drops by with shocking news. She's quitting journalism to marry a mild mannered insurance man.
But Walter is not about to lose his best reporter or his ex wife, so he dangles the story of a lifetime. A convicted man, Earl Williams, is set to be executed, and then Williams escapes from jail. Hildy's instinct is to take over.
Between bribes, police corruption, and a governor's reprieve that arrives too late, the newsroom turns into a circus of crime and comedy. Cary Grant stars as Walter Burns, manipulative, witty, ruthless. He turns charm into a weapon, like Cary always does.
Of course. You then have Rosalind Russell starring as Hildy Johnson. She practically steals the film with machine gun delivery and a wit as sharp as a headline. Honestly, you also have that wittiness that I wish I had.
Yeah, thank you. I wish I had your head for logic. So it's a good mix, right?
Yeah.
It's a good mix. And you're funny too. You just don't know you're funny.
I think I'm funny sometimes, but no one else gets my jokes.
I think you're funny. So,
Well, thank you. I
You're welcome.
appreciate that. Someone thinks I'm funny.
um, so, so see what this red wine does to you?
I know
Like
already.
half a glass, and we're like, no, you, no, you. Anyway, moving on. So Ralph Bellamy, which younger audiences will recognize from Trading Places.
Yes.
He was one of the stockbrokers and one of the rich guys that did the trading. So he stars as the sweet fiance, Bruce Baldwin, aka the guy who never stood a chance.
And you also have Billy Gilbert. This is Bone. I don't know why I don't have his first name, but anyway, he was one of the most popular character actors of his day. He appeared in over 230 films and television shows over a 33-year career. He is best known for his funny sneezing routine, and he was featured as a voice of Sneezy in the 1937 film Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. So, a little side character, but someone that people would maybe recognize his voice. So that's pretty interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So this film is pure chaos in the best way. His Girl Friday started as a remake of the Broadway play The Front Page by Ben Hetch and Charles MacArthur. And originally, Hildy was a man.
But Howard Hawks flipped the script literally. There are two rumors of how this happened. So one is during auditions, a secretary reads Hildy's lines, and Hawks realized, wait, this dialogue sounds way better coming from a woman. The second one was Hawks was hosting a dinner party where he tested the front page dialogue. A woman guest read Hildy's part, and boom, he saw the gender flip potential.
In any case, Ben Hetch himself approved the change, and then Hawks would, end up having the script rewritten, so turning it into a battle of the sexes. So cue Rosalind Russell, notepad in hand, nerves of steel, and zero time for any nonsense.
Rosalind wasn't his first choice. Ginger Rogers turned it down before Cary Grant signed on, but Russell owned the role. Feeling Grant had all the best lines, she secretly hired an ad writer through her brother-in-law to punch up the dialogue. So Hawks loved improv, so he never noticed, but Grant did. So
he greeted her every morning with, "What have you got today?" And now that's newsroom rivalry right there.
And Hawks encouraged that energy. He told actors to talk over each other for realism. Most films averaged 90 words a minute. This one clocked in at around 250 words per minute.
That's incredible.
So this was one of the first films preceded by Stage Door, 1937, to have characters talk over the lines of characters for a more realistic sound. So prior to this, movie characters completed their lines before the next lines were started. Very stilted. If you see some older movies, it's very
it's
you,
kind
you
of
can
much
tell
like
it.
a
It's
play
like
too.
finished,
Yeah. Or
Very-
I
very
can see
much.
from like the silent films where even though you're not hearing anything, but you need to see the motion of the lips moving here, and then you're moving the camera to look at this person, right? So you can't have people talking over each other. You would never understand what the heck is going on.
That makes sense because they're thinking that's what the audience wants, because
Yeah.
at that point, that's all they had given the audience. So
Exactly.
it makes sense, right? So Ginger Rogers and Katharine Hepburn starred in Stage Door. I've seen that, but
I was just looking at like a trailer for it, and so there were some scenes you're like, it makes sense when you think about like Katharine Hepburn, like, gosh, she can talk a mile a minute, right?
Uh-huh.
But what's kind of interesting because Ginger Rogers was in that one. Ginger Rogers was previously the one who was selected for this film. So that's interesting. So obviously her performance from that film was an indication of, yeah, let's get her on board.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I've seen Stage Door. It's a fantastic movie.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen it, I suggest you watch it. I get 1937 might scare you, but it won't disappoint, I promise. Lord Hopps got the idea to overlap the dialogue from Frank Capra's American Madness, and that was from 1932.
And I did look at some of the clips from there too. And yeah, you could see the fast-paced conversations overlapping. I also kind of saw some similarities to It's a Wonderful Life because there was a bank scene where everyone's coming in for their money. So
Right. I wonder if some of the madcap kind of sprung from this as well.
sure. So the film is so fast, you're going to spill your wine by trying to keep up. Hawks's newsroom is like a crime scene of conversation. Words are everywhere. Much of the overlapping dialogue was ad-libbed, which is fascinating. So people have to be witty and on their toes to be able to do that.
Yeah, definitely.
And so to capture it cleanly, Hawks actually used multiple microphones and had technicians switch between as many of 35 mics per scene, which is crazy when you think about that. So no incidental music, just caffeinated conversation and chaos.
Don't forget, Cary Grant drops the meta joke when describing Bruce Baldwin. He says something like, "He looks like that fellow in the movies, Ralph Bellamy." Well, that's because it is Ralph Bellamy.
And another kind of self-reference gem, he also says, like, the last man that said that to me was Archie Leach just weeks before he had his throat cut. And Archie Leach, of course, was Grant's real name.
Yeah.
And we actually mentioned this repurposed line as it was used in Arsenic and Old Lace, which also starred Cary Grant. And, we were trying to find his tombstone, which we've yet to find, but it also might be just the cut of the film, right?
I might have to watch it again.
I know.
My arm.
Maybe sit, stand a little bit closer. But if you want to, you can check out season 2, episode 1 for our.
Tell us where it's at.
Yeah, if you
Give
see
us
it,
a-
let us know.
Tell us where it's at. The original Easter egg, right?
Exactly.
So the production code objected to things like robbing the jailer or the kidnapping subplot, but Hux talked his way through most of it. He even added that cheeky opening card. It all happened in the dark ages of the newspaper game.
There's definitely some very non-PC stuff in there that, yeah, I guess this can cover all of that, right? Back in the day when newspaper game was, pretty much they're, did whatever they want, said whatever they want, what have you. So it kind of covers that, I guess, but it's, a little cringy sometimes.
Right. Right.
So the story of hiding the escaped killer, Earl Williams, in a desk. So that was actually totally based on a real newsroom event. So there was a New York editor that once hid a fugitive in his office until his paper got the scoop. And there's a little bit more information we'll talk about related to that once we're watching the film.
Yeah. So real crime, fake desk. Well, that's booby trap gold, right?
Oh,
there.
absolutely. Another fun fact, Grant introduced Rosalind Russell to her future husband, producer Frederick Brisson. I do feel like Cary Grant seems to be someone who's always seems to be trying to create love matches.
Yeah, but probably so they stopped hitting on him.
There might have been that part too, yes.
Like,
But I feel like he did the same thing for Katharine Hepburn and some other people too. Like, I just keep on seeing that over and over again. But it could be the fact that, yeah, he's like, I'm not interested, but I don't want to be mean about it. Let me find someone else for you instead.
It could just maybe he just believed in love.
Yeah,
that's what I'd like.
You never know.
That's what I'd like to believe anyway. So, and Bellamy had done this dance before in The Awful Truth, a very good movie too. Hollywood's favorite custody battle: who gets the girl, who gets the last word. So I knew, I was like, wait a minute, this particular time had been done where the the ex-wife was going to marry somebody else, and you have to win them back at the last minute. And I'm like, this has been done.
The other one with Cary Grant and Hepburn and Jimmy Stewart.
That's
Mafia Story.
I love that movie. Love that movie. I remember the first time I saw High Society. I was like, wait a minute. I've seen this movie with Grace Kelly. Like, this is the Philadelphia Story. I've seen this, but what a great, great movie. Yeah. But and they weren't purposely making remakes, but we complain now. It's like, oh my gosh, are there no new materials? We're seeing the same thing over and over. But if you pay attention, it's happened to me a lot of times where I'm watching a movie and going, wait a minute. we just did a podcast on this where the lady vanishes in the part where they're in the hotel and stuff. I'm like, did I not see this and it happened one night? Because I'm
Mm,
pretty sure I've seen this whole scene with the sheet up between the beds and the whole Odyssey. I was like, I feel like I'm watching it happen one night again. And
yeah.
you and I went to a movie theater and
Yeah.
actually watched a retro night to
Yeah.
watch that. Yeah, that's what we do on in our free time. We go to actually movie theaters and watch old movies.
Yes.
Because you can stream it at home, we know that, but, it's not this we go to the movie theater to see it, so.
Exactly. Well, and I was in California recently, so I know my favorite theater in the whole world is the Stanford Theater, and that is over in California in the Bay Area, in Palo Alto, because of the timing of when I was going to go visit and was there going to be any films on screen. I was very nervous because I haven't been able to go there for years. And so by the time they put out the events for the month, it was Westerns. And so I got to see Stagecoach. I forget what the other one is actually, because it's not a favorite of mine. So, but
Yeah.
Stagecoach is a favorite with John Wayne. But on big screen,
Which is
it was
terrific.
double feature. John Ford directed that. And what happens is that in between the films, they actually have this gorgeous organ come up and they have an organist playing tunes in between. So really cool. And if you go there during the silent films, they actually play with the organ the entire time during the film. Anyway, I digressed significantly, but let's get back to our film, which is, what is this? I've gotten distracted now. His Girl Friday.
We're not even through well, we still have some more some more fun film facts though.
We do.
So, see, this is what happens. We're not even through the first half of the wine glass. So it's always Cary Grant, because who can resist the get off the trapeze energy? And we make that reference because he used to be a trapeze.
Between the feminist rewrite, the record breaking dialogue, and the onset rivalry, His Girl Friday wasn't just a screwball, it was actually very revolutionary. It actually ended up reinventing what both the chemistry and comedy would sound like on screen.
A ton of feminist undertones in this film. It's considered to be way ahead of its time for its portrayal of capable, independent female lead who's the equal of her male colleagues in a male-dominated profession. And Hildy is an exception to the era's typical love interest and damsel in distress roles, which the save me roles, right? So the next time you're arguing over dinner, let's try to do a 240 word minute rewrite. I might be able to pull it off. I talk a lot. So there's probably people who know me would be like, I think she could probably do it, but I'd have to work really hard at it. Pull out the stopwatch and see if I could do it. Right.
Well, yeah, it's kind of like, where you're doing a typing test. Can you type 100 words per minute? This is, can you speak 240 words per minute? Bit of a challenge, I think. But remember, whether you're chasing headlines or heartlines, never estimate a girl with a deadline.
Yes, ma'am.
So at this time, we're going to go ahead and transition to watching the film. You're welcome to join us as we watch and discuss the film His Girl Friday by checking out our accessory reel, which is a bonus companion track. Otherwise, continue with Mamie and I as we provide a few snippets from the film, and then we'll discuss the criminal themes we identified throughout the film, His Girl Friday, 1940.
Oh, Walter, you're wonderful in a loathsome sort of way. Now, will you please be... Oh, Post, get me Walter Burns, quick. Hildy Johnson. Walter, Hildy. Oh, William just escaped from the county jail. Yeah. Don't worry, I'm on the job.
You're home.
No, it doesn't. Now, remember, you never delivered this.
Yes, I did.
No, you didn't. You got caught in the traffic or something.
No, I came around the
Well,
back.
pretend you did. Now, get out of here and don't let anybody see you.
Post, I covered your story for you, and I got in a fine mess doing it. Now I'm getting out.
You drooling idiot. What do you mean?
Just what I said.
There are 365 days in a year one can get mad. How many times you got a murderer locked up in a desk? Once in a lifetime. Hildy, you got the whole city by the seat of the pants.
Sure, I know.
You know. You got the brain of a pain.
I'm here through.
Listen, the last man who said that to me was Archie Leach just a week before he cut his throat.
That's so.
We've been in worse jams than this, haven't we, Hildy?
Nope.
Okay, well, let's get into the criminal analysis of the film, His Girl Friday. The film blends screwball comedy with crime, politics, and media ethics. The criminal elements we discussed are wrongful conviction, political corruption, journalism as a criminal accomplice. So, with that, go ahead and kind of just start talking about wrongful conviction and kind of justice system critique.
Yeah, so wrongful conviction and system critique, um, kind of speaks to, on this is the central case involves Earl Williams, who's a man convicted of shooting a policeman. His trial is rushed, his mental health is ignored, and the state is determined to make him a political trophy. This is classic scapegoating. Politicians pushing for conviction, not because the evidence is airtight, but because they need to look tough on crime before an election. The governor delays his reprieve, showing how politics manipulates justice for votes. In Williams' case, the film makes it clear his confession was coerced, his crime being vulnerable in the wrong political season. Much of the tension comes from whether Williams is guilty or simply a victim of political corruption and systematic injustice. Williams himself is a victim of systemic injustice, railroaded to execution to serve as a political pawn. His jailbreak adds urgency, but also highlights the desperation of a man caught in a rigged systems. Now, with wrongful convictions, so there's dozens of cases from the 1920s through the 90s, later revealed
Period, right?
to be coerced confessions, racial bias, fabricated evidence. All this echoed in Earl Williams' plight. Historically, this mirrors real cases where marginalized defendants, especially immigrants in the working poor, were fast-tracked to execution. Think of the Sacco and Vanzetti case of the 90s, where two Italian immigrants were executed among doubts about their guilt. And then in the 1920s, Italian immigrants and anarchist Nicola Sacco and Bartolomeo Vanzetti were on trial and subsequently executed for a 1920 robbery and murder, a case that highlighted societal anti-immigrant and anti-radical sentiments following the Red Scare. Despite widespread protests, years of appeals, and belief in their innocence due to prejudicial bias, Sacco and Vanzetti were executed in 1927, a verdict that drew international attention and remains a famous example of alleged injustice today. So, a little bit of background: Sacco and Vanzetti were Italian immigrants who were also avowed anarchists, meaning they opposed all forms of government. To put it into context, the Red Scare, their 1920 arrest and subsequent 1921 occurred during a period of intense social tension. It was where the Red Scare was fear of immigrants and radical ideologies like anarchism was very widespread.
Are we getting to like a Red Scare at this point in time
I
in our history?
I believe that very much. I believe that
Oh.
very, very much. Yes, I do, and you're seeing the effects of that, absolutely. So the crime they were charged with, armed robbery and the murder of two paymasters in Braintree, Massachusetts on April 15th, 1920. So the trial and its controversies. So you had biased proceedings. The trial was marred by a prejudiced atmosphere, with the judge allowing evidence of their anarchist beliefs and immigrant status, which many felt unfairly influenced the jury. You have circumstantial evidence against Sacco and Vanzetti, which was largely circumstantial, further fueling doubts about their guilt. And I'm sure, which was probably an all-white jury, all-white male jury, which was the standard at the time. And so their appeals were denied, repeated attempts to secure a new trial and appeal the verdict were denied by the judge, leading to accusations of judicial unfairness. Then you have an international outcry, and then the subsequent execution. So you have global protests, and the case sparked worldwide protests, strikes, and riots, with many believing Sacco and Vanzetti were targeted for their radical politics and foreign origins.
It's kind of interesting, though, right? Because if you're saying in the 1920s through the 1940s, this was just very prevalent. Why, for these two individuals, did this cause global or national protests? Or maybe was it just
Somehow
an example, right? You're taking one example, and we're going to go ahead and take this
it
and
could be
represents a whole bunch of other things that are going out there.
Yeah, it can just be the perfect storm that comes together. It's that one lightning rod of a case or of a circumstances is the one that strikes the match. It can just be a boiling situation. If this was the one that boiled it over, again, it still happens today when you see it's tolerant, and then it's just something triggers, and you never know what it is, and just that's the one.
And it may not be, it may not be like that worthwhile, in the sense of there are maybe more compelling cases out there where the person was really truly innocent versus it sounds maybe, maybe they're trying to get out of the murder aspect of it or something like that. It was accidental. But the fact versus someone like you were caught stealing and we're going to just go ahead and execute you because of whatever reason, right?
Children, I mean, which is how many are there? And then you have the cases that get the big attention in the media. And, it's like, why them? And it's time. It's timing sometimes. It's just, who knows? It's always been that way. It's always going to be that way. Sometimes fame has something to do with it. Sometimes it's the circumstances. Sometimes it's salacious, depending on what the details are.
I can see too, like where you see it, I think a lot too, is if the individuals it is an external look, right? So it's their beauty. Wow, that person was handsome. That was a gorgeous woman. It looks like the perfect life, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Right?
And sometimes it may not be anything more than that being able to take very opposite sides. I mean, especially in this country, nothing's better than being able to have absolutely opposite views on any one topic. And you can see where this might be about the anarchist beliefs, the ones that on this side who really believed what they believed, and the other ones were absolutely against it. And that just sets up a whole situation in and of itself. When it gets to a trial, and well, I'm not seeing it here, and I'm not terribly familiar with this. I will be willing to bet you the media had a ton to do with it. Just like this, the media. I mean, because this movie speaks a lot to how at the end where it's like he had his gun didn't work. He didn't even have a gun. So the media fuels, and they're the ones really. Why do some things are over other things? Sometimes I think it has nothing more to do than what the media picks up, and once the media picks it up, that puts it on the front page. That's the irony. I think that this is almost a satire more than it's a comedy of what makes it to the front page.
We're going to be talking a little bit more about that because I think it's called like yellow journalism, whether it be true or not.
Well, it leads current environment. The media is sometimes it's not responsible with what their role is and what's going on, and can contribute to some pretty bad outcomes. I personally feel when they have absolutely within their power to contribute to better outcomes. But sometimes controversy is what sells.
Right.
Well, there's not papers anymore.
Right. But that's what sells, right?
Yeah, that's what sells.
So it's one of those things like, I will actually go to those sites that say happy news or happy stories because they seem to be few and far between. And if you go in the regular media, you don't see those very often. You actually have to go to another site to find out what are some positive stories out there. And that's just a handful. There's a lot more positive things going on there, but it's not covered at all.
You open up, and it's like, is there anything going? Is there any? He talks about. I'll move that. Those, if they're positive, they're a human interest story.
Right. The rooster.
Yeah.
Let's talk
move that. That's don't take that out. It's a human interest. So with this, I mean, 7 years that they went around with legal wrangling and the international protests, and even after all that, both men were still executed in August 1927, never to be swayed. Right? I don't know would it had a different outcome if social media had been involved back then. I mean, it's social or better. It has its own horribleness too. But sometimes it can make a difference and can change minds for the better.
True.
It really can. So, and because so during the 1920s and the 40s, police departments, it was a common thing to use brutal interrogation techniques as I'm sure you've heard, what are you giving me the third degree? So you see where that comes from. It was physical and psychological coercion.
It's like putting your, under a hot light.
A rubber hose.
Yeah.
We've heard these. They're funny today, but these stereotypes come from somewhere. So the third degree is, using beatings, tortures, sleep deprivation, and prolonged isolation. And I've heard people, when this has been discussed, say, I would never confess to anything I didn't do. It's like, well,
Right.
I don't know. You might confess to be for something to just end.
Right.
End, you don't know what you might be capable of. So there's a landmark case. It's Brown versus Mississippi, and this was in 1936. So in this landmark case, 3 black farmers were tortured until they confessed to a murder. So the Supreme Court's unanimous decision that these confessions were involuntarily obtained set a precedent for future cases. The ruling established that a confession obtained through physical abuse violated the 14th Amendment's due process clause and were inadmissible in court. Convictions of murder which rest solely upon confessions shown to have been extorted by officers of the state by torture of the accused, void under this due process clause of the 14th Amendment. The constitutional tests following Brown versus Mississippi, so in using a totality of the circumstances test to determine if a confession was voluntary, which consider the suspect's personal characteristics and the conditions of the interrogation. So, with the inadmissibility, actions obtained through coercions were deemed unconstitutional and cannot be admitted as evidence in state criminal proceedings. Keep in mind, this still goes on. Maybe it's not beatings and maybe it's not torture, but there's still, and still happens with false confessions because it is, and there's actually departments who study these, when these cases go to trial, and you can see because they'll go back and say, I didn't do it. And it was they'll recant, and you can watch a particular police officer read them. So you were there that night, right? So you stabbed them 25 times, right? And then and especially it starts to become really important when you get a defendant or a suspect who maybe has a lower IQ, maybe a less of an education, and they're very susceptible to suggestion.
Mental health.
Yes, and so it's easy to talk them as and psychologically, because they'll start thinking, well, wait a minute, did I? Maybe it's easy enough to do.
I think we talked about it the other day.
Yeah,
you start to think,
I do that. I know.
Yeah,
maybe like power of suggestion is easy enough to do.
Starts changing the story in your mind.
Yeah,
whereas initially I thought it was this, but now
your brain wants to latch onto it, right? And it's one of the reasons that minors are not allowed to be interrogated unless their parent is present in the room, because they know that that's just a landmine right there. And the biggest reason why, when you say, I want a lawyer, they've got to shut up and stop talking to you. And anything that's obtained after you say, I want a lawyer, it's not admissible. It's over, because, you just crack. It's just a very interesting subject. And some of these things you can actually see and put yourself in that situation. Go, I don't know if I could hold up underneath that, because they'll hold them 13, 14, 15 hours.
Right.
And just keep them in there. They're not allowed to do this anymore, but boy, do they come close. I mean, they're not rubber in the third degree, but it is dangerously close, and they still get away with it. And it's still usually, again, marginalized communities. It's educated, some type of mental incapacity. It still happens. So as we talked about, the shifting tactics in the wake of the Brown decision, they began to shift away from the explicit coercion, more subtle psychological methods. And they're allowed to do this, believe it or not, which is lying to suspects, saying they know things that they don't know. They're allowed to do that. It's allowed.
Well, it's like you separate people and then they say, oh, well, so-and-so told me about this, right? Like that.
They're absolutely allowed to do that, using manipulative interrogation techniques, and allowed police interrogation techniques to include evidence-based, non-coercive methods to elicit accurate information, while physical force is prohibited. Psychological strategies like confronting suspects and using the deception are permissible under certain conditions, like I just said, as long as the suspect's statements appear voluntary, prioritized information gathering over confessions. So some of the information gathering techniques can be like a cognitive interview, which aims to enhance memory retrieval, but you've got to be careful not to be. Are you
Like prompting.
are you prompting memory retrieval, or are you planting memories?
So it makes me think like Anatomy of a Murder a little bit, right? Where it's not quite the same thing, but I was actually thinking not her, but actually him when they first met. I know I'm thinking Jimmy Stewart, but when they first had that conversation, when he's trying to get him to think like, why did you do this? Like, what would be the reason? And he's like, well, maybe insanity, or it's
Is
kind
that
of
it? Yeah.
I don't know that
maybe
that's
it was.
quite the same type of interview, but it kind of gives me a feel of it. But I think you're thinking of another piece of that too.
Exactly, because you're planting the ideas.
Yeah.
So, do you remember and you don't even have to go, you had the knife, didn't you? It can be something so much more subtle than that, and go, where they can start to visualize that and start to go, now that and it's especially effective when they might have addiction issues, and they're like, well, maybe I don't remember it that way. Maybe I don't remember that I was, and it's just it's so easy to do, and it's easy to recognize. So these detectives or these interviewers walk a very fine line. They've got you've got to let them talk. And and the thing about it is, if somebody's guilty, sometimes they don't worry about what they're guilty. They need to wrap up the case, especially if it's high profile and they're getting a lot of pressure from the public. Otherwise, if you sit and let somebody talk, they'll talk themselves right into what you need them to talk you into. People will talk themselves right into where you need them to be if just let them talk. So there's the enhanced memory retrieval by building rapport, allowing the interviewee to talk freely and using memory prompting techniques. You become their buddy of the, we can,
I know you like, I'm here to help you.
Right.
And really just to figure out like what's going on.
Tell me what's going on, and I can help you.
Yeah.
Which they can't.
Yeah.
They absolutely can. I can make this better for you. You're facing the light, the death the death penalty. But if you're honest with us, and that's absolutely untrue. But they're allowed to do that. Again, they're allowed to do that. But they don't have any sway over whether they get the death penalty or not. Being honest is not going to. Oh yeah, I did kill 10 people. I don't get the death penalty, right? It doesn't work like that. It's just people want to, like, I saw one time. Like, can I go? And the conviction didn't go through because, first of all, his parent, who was a minor, his kid wasn't in there. His kid's parent wasn't in the room. And eventually, one time, the kid was just he's ready to say anything. He's like, "Can I, if I tell you what you want to hear, can I go home?" He just wanted to go home. He just wanted it to be over with. He would have told them anything.
Okay.
And obviously, that didn't go through because they're like, "What the heck," So there's a Kinsick interview, which is focused on analyzing verbal and nonverbal behaviors and text signs of detection. And we know what that is: touching your face.
That group of people, I think it's on Instagram that I see them, where they like they look at interviews, or they look at people on trial, and they like talk about, did you see what she did when she was talking and she rolled her eye this way?
I love that.
She paused, and you're thinking, yeah, she just paused. Like, what about it? She did that pause, and you could tell how things shifted after that pause. It's like, wow, it's very subtle, right? You're looking at, unless this is your area of study, but as Penelope, I'm pointing at me, would not pick up on that.
Yeah,
right.
I'm very interested in it. Yeah, because I watch, I pay very close attention to how people. It's just, I don't know why. It's just, I just do. I pay attention to people's body language and how they speak. And I say it all the time: the devil's in the details.
Right.
And if I don't know why. I'm definitely not a Rhodes Scholar by any. I'm not the most intellectual person in the world, but I can see shifts. And it's like, there it is. And it's little tiny things. It's even then it's bigger things that, anyone knows, where it's, repeating a question back. And people do that so they can come up with an answer. They have time to think it through. But there's reasons I know that I probably have that ability. It's not for a good reason, but I'm glad I have it, because it really is. It's not anything I'm proud of, but it's something that's just, I guess it is a skill. I never thought of it as a skill.
I think it's a skill.
Yeah. Yeah. And it can be just in a casual situation, and I can just, for lack of a term, I can be like, "They're full of shit," and I know that they are. Many times I've come away from that going, that was all a bunch of crap. That none of That didn't happen. It didn't happen that way. Sometimes I look like I just am like a Debbie Downer, or I'm just, don't like people or something. It's like, no, but I can tell when somebody's feeding me a line of crap, unless I'm in love with them. And then then all that goes right out the window. But anyway, so then there's a peace model, which is a non-accusatorial approach that emphasizes just information gathering and dialogue rather than just obtaining confession. Not that they're getting a confession, but the profilers will use this type of methods to engage when they're trying to when they meet with the serial killers to try to, when they're doing the profiling, and they'll kind of use this technique to be able to, them to trust them, and they know, and they don't have to go too far with it, but it's like to trust them to talk to them, because most serial killers they love, once you get them to talking, they love to talk about themselves, and they love to, because they're reliving it. They love to relive what they've done, so it's not that hard to get them. But even if they haven't been caught, it's a model they use because they know that they can get them. They want somebody to hear. It's no fun to have done it if you can't tell somebody about it.
It's like the people who are writing letters to the police or calling them, or let me call the newspaper, or let me call the victim.
I need to. I need to. I need credit for it, because if nobody knows I'm doing it, what's the point? Then you get into some psychological techniques, which are evidence confrontation, directly confronting a suspect with accusations and claims of evidence, whether it's true or fabricated. That's the line is like that. They're allowed to do it. Deception, using deceit to a degree, as long as physical coercion is not used, and the suspect appear.
So it's not kind of like saying, "Hey, we found evidence. Like
they can do it.
we found the knife," and they're like, "Well, how did you find the knife? Like I hid it over here."
There you go.
Well, that's where you go search now.
Yeah, and then this one where I was saying, you downplay the severity of the crime.
Because how many people really understand the law about certain crimes? Obviously, like murder, yes, that's big one, but other things, right?
Like, this one comes up. I saw this last night, where he's just like, I don't know why he did it, but he got what he wanted. This guy had killed 4 people. And I don't know where he thought this was going to go, but the guy walked right into it. The difference. He's like, we can do first degree murder, or we can do second degree, or there's manslaughter. And how you talk to me and how you tell me what happened is going to make the difference. I'm thinking, and I have actually looked, and not that I'm on the killer side, don't get me wrong, but I've seen ones where they'll tell you they're all smug at the beginning, like, we had nothing. We had absolutely no evidence.
Yeah.
And I'm going, shut up, ain't nothing, don't say a word. And they just start blabbing. But he said that last night, and then all of a sudden I was like, oh man. And then he goes, okay, we're booking you for first degree murder. I'm like, and what? Because the guy really bought. He was young, very, very young, was tired, and he really thought for a split second before he thought about it. Then you could just see the light bulb went on when he said first degree murder. He was like, he knew he was screwed. He's like, because for a split second, that guy really believed he had murdered 4 people, and he was going to waltz out with manslaughter. And that's what they do. And like I say, I'm not pro killer. Don't get me wrong. But the one guy, when you see before, they're like, unless he talks, we got nothing. And then you see him talking, like, oh man, they had nothing. They had nothing. And again,
well, you're seeing both sides, right? Like, so you're seeing the interrogation piece, but then you're also having the other side where they're saying, yeah, we actually didn't have anything, but this is what we did.
Pro killer. I just wanted the cop to have to work harder for us than that. It's like, we got nothing. And man, they should have had to work a little harder for us than that. Except like, okay, we got him, booking time.
What is that show with the guy in Colorado Springs? Gosh, I can't think of the show right now. But it goes when he was younger in Colorado Springs as a detective. And I feel like a lot of the times it's like, yeah, we didn't really have much. We thought this was the guy, but he kind of tells the story like from nowadays. I can't think of it off the top of my head. It kind of reminds me of that dialogue where it's like, yeah, we didn't know half of the stuff that was going on yet, but you're having conversations with people. You're kind of getting bits of information, but just conversations with not having a lot of information, and especially when you're first starting that investigation.
And these guys, and I don't know, there's been some
McKenna, something like that.
I don't remember off the top of my head, but there's been some recent cases where some detectives have been fired, pull out force, and they've had to go back and revisit cases because there's just so many There's one thing to get one confession. It's like that's good, but like detectives, this one detective, he had this stack of confessions. Everybody confessed, and then it unraveled because they found there was one false confession. They could prove it, and then the house of cards just came down, and they found out that this guy was basically, they do the video, they do the not only the videotape, but they do the tape recordings. There were gaps where he'd stop. Oh, let's take a break and stop. But what do you think? There's taking a break. He's now getting in their face. And, so yeah, he went down. If anybody thinks this doesn't still happen, it absolutely does. And I got to tell you, I've said many times, I would not. You don't have. There's time I've seen things where I'm like, if somebody or one of my friends or acquaintance died, and I was just home sleeping in bed, Jesus, I'd be scared because if I didn't have an alibi or something, because
Right.
you could, if anybody doesn't think they could be railroaded in something, you're not paying attention.
Right.
You're just not paying attention because you could be railroaded into anything. If you don't have a solid alibi, it is the difference between letting the facts lead you to the conclusion versus coming to a conclusion and makes the facts fit the conclusion. And that's what's scary. It scares me.
Yeah.
Not that I do it, but just, and you can be like innocent people don't get charged. See, the DNA evidence is proving that now all the people that are getting exonerated that have spent, one guy for 45 years of his life is gone. He spent in jail. That turned out he didn't do it.
Yeah.
And then you have the one woman who said she lied and said he did something. She's like, yeah, I lied about that. So don't tell me that it doesn't happen, because it does.
So I did find the person, Lieutenant Joe Kenda, a homicide hunter. Yeah.
Yeah, he's the one. He's always talking about this explication.
Like when he was younger.
Yeah.
Colorado Springs, that's just because I know people that live there. So.
Yeah, I know I've watched him a couple of times. I just didn't recognize the Colorado Springs.
Right.
So, but still, some of the prohibited techniques still stand. Physical coercion, you can't put your hands on anybody. That hasn't changed. It's never going to change. That would be just an absolute no out of the gate if anybody saw that. Tortures, beatings, no. Extreme psychological stress. I think we all know that sleep deprivation beyond limits, blasting something into the cell of music, or use of phobias if you were scared of spiders, spiders in there. So some important considerations. You have to voluntary statements is even when deception is used, any confession must be voluntary. Confessions are accusatorial and manipulative techniques can lead to false confessions. And it's a major concern, and you got to look at these very, very carefully. And that's up to the judge to look what he's letting in. He's got to look at that and now, analyze that and make sure what is getting in front of that jury passes the smell test, right? And then illegal restrictions and admissibility of confessions obtained through certain tactics like Mr. Big stings can be restricted by courts. And I don't know exactly what that term means, but unless is probably something to the effect of entrapment.
Covert, sorry. So Mr. Biddick is a covert investigation procedure used by undercover police to elicit confessions from suspects in cold cases, usually murder. So the police officer creates a fictitious gray area or criminal organization, and then they seduce the suspect into joining it. So they're building a relationship with the suspect, gaining their confidence, and then they're enlisting the help in a succession of criminal acts. So delivering goods, credit card scams, selling guns, for which they're paid. And then once the suspect has become enmeshed with the criminal gang, they're persuaded to divulge information about their criminal history, usually as a prerequisite for being accepted as a member of their organization. So
borderlines on entrapment.
Something that was, I guess, developed over in Canada. Actually.
Yeah, you have to be really careful about that too. I mean, I don't know if anybody remembers way back, this has to do with murder, but the way back with Mayor Barry of D.C., when they were in that hotel room, got him to confess about all that cocaine and stuff. It was very controversial because he's like, doing and saying things he would have never done and say had he not been enticed to do and say it. And it's like, is he doing it? Is he doing it? Yes, but are you walking? Yes, it's a gray area. You got to be on the up and up. I mean, there's a theory in law that you 10 guilty men walk free before you in prison or find one guilty man or innocent man guilty. It's just nobody likes it. But that's how our justice system is set up. Period.
It's interesting you were talking about the mayor for DC. So our next area of conversation is actually corruption and political crime. And so when we look at the film, you have the mayor and the sheriff that were conspiring to deliberately delay the governor's reprieve to execute Williams, since his death benefits their reelection. And so this is, you know, obstruction of justice. That's what it is. And they're actively conspiring to let a man hang for their political gain. Um, and that was the guy. Of course, I can't remember his name, but the gentleman that looks like uh, Charlie Chaplin, right? Who had the reprieve, and they were preventing him from passing that along. Pettibone. So anyway, their attempt to bribe the journalists also shows corruption as the intersection of politics, policing, and in the press. And it's election fraud by proxy, so they're gaming the legal systems to secure votes. It's also showing kind of how fragile, right, that the justice becomes when politics is also in the driver's seat. Hawks doesn't let them get off very easily. When the reprieve finally comes, they pretty much look like clowns. However, they are also not arrested, which is another
movies that, although it is tied up in the boats, they run off in sunset to get married. Nobody gets your comeuppance in this.
It's very true.
They, regardless of what happened, well, they get the Cary Grant and Rosalind Russell. They get off because they weren't hiding a fugitive because he'd already been reprieved. So that's how they wash their hands of that.
Right.
But that doesn't let the other two off the hook. But it was one of those ones where everybody says, you know what? How about if we all just agree this didn't happen? It's a happy ending. And, which is why Miss jump out the window for no obvious reason.
Right.
She's dead. No, she's moving. Well, moving what? She's not going to come. You're not jumping out a 3-story window and coming out in good shape. But it's one of the few movies that didn't have where nobody gets what's coming to them. Not really.
It's very
That's
true.
okay. I love this movie so much. I'm going to overlook it. Not that anybody cares when I think about the movie. But I mean, this wasn't a movie to, would this movie be enjoyable if everybody's going to jail? No. We want to see them run off and get married. No harm, no foul. He wasn't executed. The jumping out the window, I agree with you. I know that was to get the people out of the room, and I think we could have went about it a different way. But she was Looney Tunes and fragile and upset, and nobody wants to listen to her. And I didn't listen to. I mean, she kept saying nobody listened to her, but she never said anything to listen to. She just kept, nobody's listened to me. Nobody's listened. Say something.
Well, she was
say something.
She was saying, because essentially it sounded like they told a story of where they were sleeping together and all this sort of stuff. And she's like, this is what happened. And no one's listening to her.
They're lying.
They were ignoring her.
Lying.
Yeah, they were lying about her relationship, what had happened, all that sort of stuff, and put her in this kind of position where it's like, I need someone to talk to me, to listen to what I'm saying, because everything that's being put out there is a lie.
I mean, this is a screwball comedy in a lot of ways, but this is really an indictment on media, on news, and I mean, says some things don't.
Right. There's definitely some laughter out there, but it's definitely hiding that darker truth, which is, real lives were being destroyed as part of all those games. And a good example is that young girl, right?
Yeah. Maybe that's why they had her jump out the window, is because they're showing you what they have drove her to. Maybe that was the point of the whole thing.
Yeah.
So mythological, that might have been it. Try to take that one away with it. It'll drive you crazy enough.
I know it will. So what's interesting is the use of the death penalty. I cannot talk today, but so
you want to say here?
I know penalty. But historically, this tough on crime stance that includes like capital punishment has definitely been used as a political tool for American politicians to gain support and win elections. So, for example, supporting the death penalty, like as a governor, seems to actually have helped presidential campaigns of Bill Clinton and George W. Bush, for example. So it kind of shows it's not one side or the other. It's both sides of the political realm. So while the strategy was once seen as being a very reliable path to victory, there's been shifts in kind of public opinion and increased awareness of the justice system's flaws that have kind of complicated this dynamic in recent years. Okay.
So reporters, especially Walter Burns, act unethically like hiding Williams in a desk to control the scoop. So Walter Burns isn't just an editor; he's practically a mob boss in a newsroom.
Like I said, he kind of looked. I mentioned he looked like a mob.
Yeah, with a double-breasted suit,
Yeah.
striped suit. So he bribes officials, hides fugitives, plants stories, all technically illegal, but in the service of the story. And the press manipulates information, blurring the line between truth-seeking and criminal conspiracy. And this mirrors broader concerns about the power of media to distort justice. So journalistic ethics out the window. And this is yellow journalism at its finest, where headlines matter more than the truth. Absolutely. But here's the twist. Hawks makes it hilarious. We laugh while Walter commits obstruction, harboring a fugitive, and even attempted kidnapping. He has Bruce Baldwin arrested 3 times just to keep him out of the way.
And the mother-in-law was kidnapped.
It's funny. So it's comedy, but it's also commentary. The press can either expose corruption or become corruption. In Walter's case, it's both.
Yeah, it is true, right? Because not only was he obviously participating in corruption, but they did reveal that corruption that was also happening. So very true.
So there's some famous cases where the media, oh my gosh, just sensationalize. We talked about this a little earlier. Take something and we don't know, we discussed, we don't know why, but something's just that everything converges together and the media just jumps on it and creates these sensational, and then it becomes everybody's got their own take on it. And then once that happens, the more sensational, the better, right?
Right.
So this goes clear back to, for a while, back to 1893. So we have Lizzie Borden. We all know Lizzie Borden.
Yeah.
And the intense publicity around Fatty Arbuckle, which ruined his career.
Yeah.
Absolutely ruined his career. About they got into the salacious details,
Right.
Which I won't share here about what had happened. Yeah. And he was accused of murder, but it was how it happened was that's what they focused on, was the salaciousness of how he quote murdered her. So then you get into Dr. Sam Shepard, which if you've ever watched The Fugitive with Harrison Ford and the One-Armed Man, that's based on his life.
I didn't know that.
Yes. That the One-Armed Man did it. And and again, keep in the background that when this happens, you're ruining people's lives. I mean, you're absolutely ruining people's lives. You got Amanda Knox, who I think she was innocent. They had nothing on her. It was just it was easy enough. She's disappeared from the spotlight. I think she's got a documentary out now. She's just trying to, and of course, after the media gets done chewing them up, then it has to have a movie about it too, right? You've got Casey Anthony. I mean, it just the list goes on of just what they decide to make salacious about these things. The newest one is this Caroline Flack. I just watched a documentary about her and how she committed suicide over what they did to her. That's how bad it can get.
Yeah.
Because they took even her own boyfriend. She was accused of assaulting her boyfriend. It was basically mutual. They got into a fight one night and it was dismissed. They just basically said, there's nothing here. Some police woman decided that they wanted her to be charged. She was, I don't know, like Love Island. She was some type of personality more than she was famous television presenter. But as they and then that was released by the police station, which happens a lot. The police will call the media and set that wheel in motion. And a little bit of a skirmish turned in that she assaulted him with a lamp and it was a horror show with the scene, which it was not, and then turned it into this, she almost killed him and even he's like, none of this happened, but it just took on a life of its own. She got fired. She couldn't even walk out in public, and she felt like the only way to get out of it was just to kill herself. And now her mother is trying to get the truth out there. That's like, and make them, and basically what she wants them to admit that they lied and they made it all up, and that they just to sell. I don't even know if they sell newspapers anymore, because nobody goes out and buys a newspaper
At the
anymore.
end of the day, let's say they say, sure, we'll go ahead and retract some little line somewhere that says that, like, is that going to be worthwhile for her?
Yeah,
You've lost
it's over with. Media, and I feel very strongly about this. I blame the media for a lot of where we are today, and right now in 2025, of where the media, just especially not even just social media, but the media in general, and I am particularly personally think it has a lot to do with when news became 24 hours and they have to fill out 24
Yeah.
hours 7 days a week. So they'll just report on anything and
Right.
everything, whether it's news or it's not news anymore. And I come from a generation where you watched the 6 o'clock news, Walter Cronkite, and you moved on with your life.
Yeah.
But the rise of yellow journalism in the Hearst era made clear that newspapers could or break political fortunes through selective coverage. I mean, how many politicians have just recently, Gary Hart, was it just have ended over jumping on whether who they slept with, who they didn't sleep with. Poor Monica Lewinsky couldn't even. She's just now recovering from Bill Clinton came out of it unscathed. It's usually not and stuff like this. It usually is the women that usually come out on the harsh. Men go off and they recover, and women are relegated to hiding in the shadows for the rest of their life. It's just so you have like early sensationalism was Joseph Pulitzer's, which is ironic considering we have the Pulitzer's Prize now. Yeah. New York World, and of course William Randolph Hearst's New York Journal. And they frequently use exaggerated stories and graphic images to boost circulation. As we mentioned, a practice became known as yellow journalism due to the popularity of a comic strip called The Yellow Kid that appeared in one of the papers. This is ironic because when William Randolph Hearst and his mistress, Marianne Davies, were at the receiving end of a scandal, boy, did that not want to hit the papers.
Right.
And then all of a sudden it wasn't as funny anymore.
Yeah. And I think I just wanted to mention, so yellow journalism being that's essentially journalism that's based on sensationalism and exaggeration. So that's the whole point of that. Yeah.
Exactly. And as I mentioned, you got a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week news cycle. You got to fill it up with something.
Right.
And I remember when this started, and it was CNN, and the first one I remember seeing was Columbine. And they were interviewing everybody, but they gave it a flashy name. They were interviewing everybody had an opinion. So news, it's not news anymore. And I mean, it's funny, like Fox just got sued. And they're like, hey, we're not a news station. We're just entertainment. But so they could get out of the lawsuits that they were getting. Then you have tabloids, and gosh, I don't even, as a National Enquirer, I mean, I remember that was scandalous. That National Enquirer was like, hey, it's not even us anymore. We can't even compete in this world. So many modern, I mean, say newspapers, and websites, TMZ, all of them focus on sensational stories about celebrities and politicians. And they're not to blame. I mean, if there wasn't a market for it, they wouldn't do it. We all eat it up with a spoon. Yeah. It's water cooler talk, right?
Yeah.
So it's based on rumor, speculation, rather than one substantive issue. They focus on emotional charge or unsubstantiated reports to attract viewers. Bias reporting, we know. I don't think we even have to get into that. We're living the dream on that one, right?
We are.
And just sensationalizing the actions of the opposition while downplaying similar behavior in their own party, is which I refer to as whataboutism, which is rampant. So it's taken on it's not gotten any. You would think that we've learned our lesson throughout but it's even with it's so at our fingertips now. It's like
Has it become even more worse if you think about it, right?
Because you can pick up your phone and you can read whatever you want to read nobody has a private life anymore.
Well,
right?
Also, it's international, right? So I don't need to now just, they don't need to just, your local area, your local news. It's whatever's happening now anywhere. So that's even more fodder to then work off of and sensationalize and all of that too.
See, so it's silly stuff like, this is when this isn't meant to start a dialogue on who's right and who's wrong. But, I've had a dialogue, my own dialogue about the woman who stole the baseball from that kid. And boy, it just lit the internet up, and who was wrong, and she was this and that. The woman lost her job over it. And granted, was she at her best behavior? Absolutely not. I don't know, does a wo you know, I know I've not always been at my best, but the people who lose their job over it because it was caught on somebody's phone, I'm thinking, "This has gotten crazy," because and, you know, I don't know that was a lose your job offense over because was she being a jerk? Yeah, absolutely, and you could take whatever side you want on it, but she didn't take it or she didn't
Maybe
take
if
it,
she
who
was a
cares?
pastor or something like that, I could see
But
maybe.
this woman's life is this woman can't even step outside her front door now,
Yeah.
and over what?
Right.
Something was a moment in time, but so, you know, in this movie, His Girl Friday, which is such a good movie, it's so funny, but what does it really expose? I mean, it's not just jailbreaks and bribes and screwball comedy and fast talking and all the fun things it is, but it's really about the corruption of truth itself. And I think this is a really clever way to do it because if this was a drama or some type of movie that was just saying it right there, I don't think you would sit through it because we don't want to be preached at, right?
Sure.
Nobody wants to be preached at, but it was layered in there so well. You can't miss it.
Yeah.
But you can't but you have to see it whether you want to see it or not. And it's just what makes it fabulous and it's I called it satirical. Maybe it's not, but it certainly is not a favorable light to the media. It's just not
It's
favorable.
not.
And this movie's help. So
Yeah.
do better. Do better, people.
It's also a reminder that, justice isn't always blind either, right? Sometimes she's gag bound and rewritten by
Yeah.
whomever owns the press.
Kicks in the behind.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And Walter Burns. He may never see a jail cell. Yeah. Sure.
Yeah, he's not going to jail.
But he is guilty. And they did what they did. They wrote it away. We know that. Of being the most dangerous kind of criminal, and that's what a mouthful. And that we're going to end on, which is one who makes us laugh while he bends the law, being a clown.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm going to leave it at that one. What do you?
Yeah, I think
I
so.
don't think you can get any better than that.
No.
That is an absolute. That is drop it in the punch bowl statement.
I agree.
Peace
Well,
out.
that we'll go ahead and summarize and then we'll close out. But we end up tasting and loving the 2021 Golden Turkey,
Eat too much.
which we can definitely drink too much. Which is a red blend of Cabernet Franc, Merlot, Petit Verdot, Cabernet Sauvignon, and Tannat grapes. And this is from Enhart Vineyards in Percival, Virginia. We end up pairing the wine with the 1940 film His Girl Friday. And the film was directed by Howard Hawks, and it starred Cary Grant and Rosalind Russell. His Girl Friday was actually based on the Broadway play The Front Page by Ben Hetch and Charles MacArthur. The film's script modified the character Hildy to be a woman, which was played by Rosalind. And we end up wrapping up our session discussing things like wrongful conviction, political corruption, and journalism as a criminal accomplice.
His Girl Friday isn't just a comedy. It's a crime filled wrapped in banter. Every laugh hot felony.
And it's
Who
just
doesn't like a good laugh with a felony?
exactly.
Yeah.
And it's just a reminder that, sometimes the most dangerous criminals aren't in prison, they're in power or running your newsroom.
And if Cary Grant is your editor, well, you're probably not making that honeymoon train.
So with that, it wraps up our headline tonight: Wine, Films, and More Corruption Than a Crooked Press Room. Join us next time on the Booby Trap Podcast with our bonus accessory reels. Like, share, follow, interact with us on your listening app and social media channels. We've also curated a Spotify music playlist and YouTube video channel for each episode, so be sure to check them out. Tell your friends and family, and also if you have a wine or film that you'd like to pair, let us know and we'll do our best for you.
And finally, for this episode's teaser to be answered on social media, and if you do it, I'll do it. And I don't want to, but I will. If your life were a front page headline, what crime would it cover? Think about that. And again, if we get some, if you want to share, and if we get some real answers, I'll uncover some of the dirt in my life and let some of those skeletons out of the closet that have just been knocking on the door.
Well, you know what, people, it's worthwhile. So I'm just saying, send up some good ideas.
That's right.
So until next time, keep your corks tight, your glasses full, and don't trust the guy with the press pass.
Cheers.
Thank you.